Japanese blackjack-based RPG Steam version banned in Germany, China, and Saudi Arabia for bikini armor crimes. The world has become so stupid, man. So stupid. Oh my goodness. The absolute mental illness. So before we get into these alleged crimes that this game has committed and the game company has committed, there's quite a few other things I also want to talk about in this video. I want to talk briefly about the brown dust situation. I want to talk about Jailbrew and how it's being forced to censor itself, and how Cloudflare, the actual service that hosts majority of the internet, and I made a video already discussing them about 2 weeks ago, how the internet went down for a majority of people around the world. Cloudflare is answering to Germany on censorship. American-based company at that is listening to an actual foreign country to censor the entirety of the internet and censor American sites, etc. Very bad thing in general, and I'm going to talk about this extensively in a moment, because this is honestly, out of everything I'm going to be talking about in this video, this is probably one of the most important things to talk about, because this shows once again the escalation of censorship, not just on gaming, not just on anime and manga, but also on creative expression, freedom, art, people being able to speak online. That's what this is. This is an escalation of what's been going on in the EU, the UK, in Australia, in Canada, in America as well, with all these different laws that's going on. This is more progression of that. But let's back up for a second, and let's keep it very simple for now. Let's talk about Brown Dust 2. So, there's probably a lot of people that are aware of this game either through its ads or have played the game. I personally have briefly played Brown Dust, not a lot, but I kind of enjoy the aesthetic of the game. I'm going to be blunt. I'm not going to deny that, okay? I'm an adult here. And this game apparently was going to be getting released on Steam. And a lot of people were heavily looking forward to a Steam release, being able to play it on Steam, on their PC, etc. That just sounds like a great time. But obviously, thanks to what's happened in the last 4 or 5 months, payment processors have been really giving Valve and Steam the whip. They have forced Steam to bow down and kiss the boot of Mastercard and Visa and create an entirely new policy on their platform to censor gaming. And as I've talked about in the last few months, not just with censorship of the internet, but there's been a lot of games that's clearly being targeted by Steam, or in this case, payment processors. These games are being heavily targeted and censored and not being allowed to release as they're supposed to be, with their content intact and allowing the entire world to see them like they're actually meant to be. And you have it to where they have this release set up, like they're going to release, let's say, today, like they were going to release on December 9th, but when they're going to release on December 9th, they suddenly make a surprise announcement saying, oh, we can't release the game anymore, guys, because for some reason, Steam will not allow us to post the game. And in this case, that's probably what's going on here, is that we have seen this happen already multiple times, not just with, let's say, something like Brown Dust, but just random Japanese RPG Maker games and stuff that's releasing on the platform just straight up are not allowed to release. And there's no reason really given, and there's been a lot of examples that this is something that's continuously escalating towards games that have more or less adult content. There is definitely a push for a lot of censorship, and my educated guess here is that payment processors are somewhat involved. Maybe not fully, maybe there's other reasons for why it's not being allowed to release, but I'm willing to bet you payment processors are definitely a part of the problem here, especially with what we have seen as a trend for the last few months. Now, with this being said, we need to talk about the thing I talked about opening up the video with, which was the Japanese blackjack-based RPG Steam version game that is banned in Germany, China, and Saudi Arabia. I'm going to do a hot take. If your country is being compared to China of all countries and to ban and censor games, I think you've lost the plot. I think that that is not a good look whatsoever, because China 100% censors content. Everybody knows this, unless you are either living under a rock, you're willfully being ignorant, or you're someone that is okay with censorship. Whatever the case may be, when your country is being compared to the censorship of China, instant red flag. Now, apparently the reason why this game has been terminated or banned is because of bikini armor crimes. Now, this is more or less, I think, a buzz title here, an overall blanket statement, but more or less the reason why it was not allowed to release is because of its content within its game. For instance, the character designs in question, the female characters, male characters, whatever, the designs in questions of the characters just having different outfits on, not even showing anything, is enough to get the game banned. And this honestly looks very similar. Like, for instance, the correlation of this situation reminds me a lot of, like, Dragon Quest. Now, this is very old news. It's nothing relatively new, but Dragon Quest is a game that many people have pointed out has been actively censored. For instance, a lot of the character designs and artwork and stuff has been changed to where the original aesthetic and designs are completely different from what they used to be, and it's very obvious it's because of censorship. And like I said, it's a very old topic. People have been talking about this for months, maybe even years at this point. But why I'm saying this is that it's clearly a push that you have characters, like female characters, for instance, they cannot show anything. They can't show legs, they can't show arms, neck, or whatever. If they do, they have to instantly be censored, or the game is completely banned. And I feel like that's exactly what's going on here. This is another extreme example of creative expression being completely stifled and not allowed to express itself because you have certain Karens or individuals that think any content that's adult is icky and should never be presented whatsoever. But in turn, they'll go around and be a hypocrite, and they'll allow, for instance, like something with a dude being in spandex, that's completely okay to them. And I'm just like, if you're going to be upset, at least be consistent. But it's never about that. It's just this moral signaling, virtue signaling, all in between and stuff like that. It's not a really good look. But apparently the company that is being hit by this censorship, they did an official response, by the way, in Japanese. Like, this original post is in Japanese, as you can see. It's a Japanese creator. They made a post saying, due to the character design, Brave X Junction has been tagged with, adult content filters by Steam. They have requested a re-review, but Valve basically says, nah, we're not doing that. We still think it should not be approved. And so the game has been locked. It has now been banned in multiple countries. This is really bad, and once again, I feel like there is definitely a rogue employee within the content approval system for games on Steam. I've talked about this like a month ago. There was a game that was facing a lot of issues just for a character showing their backside, and it's just like, how is that a problem? I had a full video on that, and the internet started talking about that considerably. And it's very clear that someone, a rogue employee or something, or the entire system, reviewing system, is faulty. And I feel like we are seeing a pattern here with stuff like this, especially with Japanese games, and it's happened once again. I think that this is a very bad sign for things to come, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on, as more and more people do not talk about this, because this is a very important topic that more people need to be spreading and talking about. So, with that being said, leave a like on this video. It does help out more people becoming aware of this content and finding out what's actually going on here, because more people need to know what's happening, because this is eventually going to affect everybody. It's not going to just affect content you dislike or don't care for. It will come for you. That's how it works. So, it's best to speak up about it now than let it fester and get a lot worse. Now, this isn't the first time that I've talked about Jailbrew on the channel. They have been a target of censorship for a while now. I talked about them probably 3 or so months ago. But it seems like their situation is still escalating and getting a lot worse, and it's a systematic problem that is going to eventually branch out to multiple sites around the entire internet. And so let's get into Cloudflare. So Cloudflare as a company is the actual company that is responsible for offering their services to allow the internet to function. For instance, about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, I made a video discussing that the big chunk of the internet went down. A lot of people have become aware of Cloudflare and realized that their service is pretty vital for the internet's functionality. For instance, if Cloudflare is to go down, a huge chunk of the internet just goes offline and people are no longer able to interact or talk with each other, which indicates a huge problem, not just with like the reliance on Cloudflare, but also a monopoly, how massive their monopoly actually is. But because of this monopoly, they're able to pick and choose and bully other sites or groups, companies off the internet if they so deem to choose. They have decided to choose Jailbrew. And I feel like Jailbrew is not the first site to be targeted by Cloudflare. I feel like there's probably a lot of sites that we're completely unaware of that have been hurt by Cloudflare to some degree, but we will never hear about because they were on a much smaller scale and people were relatively unaware of them. And I feel like this is getting into a deeper issue, is that Cloudflare is listening to a foreign government government. They're listening to Germany to censor content on the internet. And why I think this is a huge issue is because obviously Cloudflare in general, they're an American company. They're an American-based company. They were started in America. And so because they're an American company, they technically don't need to listen to Germany. But for some reason, they are going around the laws and regulations of America and as an American-based company, and they are censoring free speech and legal content within America for Germany's sake. That's an inherent issue. So I want to make this a little bit more simpler to understand. Cloudflare is going after Jailbrew thanks to Germany's involvement, and Germany is forcing Cloudflare to take Jailbrew down for the entire internet. It's not just affecting, let's say, Germany, it's not affecting people that use the internet in Germany. It's affecting everyone on the entire internet not being able to access Jailbrew. That's a problem. For instance, Jailbrew doesn't house any content that is illegal in America or anything like that. It's completely legal content, and so there is no business for that content to be removed in America, if you get my point. But the fact that Cloudflare is buckling and bending and listening to Germany to do this type of censorship for the entire internet is a huge issue. Why is Cloudflare, a massive monolithic company that is literally in control of a vast majority of the internet, or at least housing and allowing it to operate, listening to a foreign government? But it doesn't just stop at that. Once again, this is probably not the first example of something like this happening. Jailbrew is probably something that's become more common and people are aware of it now, but there has probably been countless sites that have been hit like this thanks to foreign governments like Germany, for instance, doing something like this and forcing Cloudflare to listen to them. So this, honestly, I'm just going to be completely blunt, needs to be investigated. This needs to be talked about because this is the same government, like Germany is the same government that will seize your electronics permanently if you criticize politicians or hurt their feelings, making jokes or memes online, play a violent video game. You will straight up actually face crimes or, actually fines or whatever. This is not good. Straight up very bad. And I think in general, the fact that we're listening to a government that's doing that and going against free speech and creative freedom is not a good look. So this right here is some damaging news, especially with how massive Cloudflare is. Once again, even if you don't care about Jailbrew, you don't care about the art and content on there or whatever, the fact they're able to do it, that's the problem. That is 100% a huge issue. So we have another contender in the ring that's not just payment processors like Visa and Mastercard, but now we have Cloudflare to worry about. Someone that controls a huge chunk of the internet now getting involved in something like this, and they've probably been involved for a while. Just many of us have been unaware of it. I'll leave it at that, though. I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention because I felt this was very important to talk about. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, leave a like on it. It helps with people noticing this. Please share this with other people because more people need to be aware of what's going on. But be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.